Hey, gorgeous. I wanted to talk to you about what happens when you are emotionally triggered. Something happened to me a couple of days ago, and I wanted to talk about my experience of being emotionally triggered and the impact it had on me and the people I was with at the time. Okay, so remember, if you like this content, please subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can get reminders of when new content is released. And this channel is absolutely 100% if you are a woman who is highly motivated, wants to be more connected with self, have clear direction, make a much bigger impact in your life and your family's life, then this channel is absolutely for you. So let's talk about emotional triggers. Emotional triggers can absolutely take the wind out of your sails. You can be happy 1 second, and then something will happen and you will slip back into a negative pattern of behavior. Okay, that's all sounding a little bit technical. So what does that actually mean? Let me give you a live, raw example of something that I experienced a couple of days ago, which took me by surprise. The trigger was that, you get those little devices from the bank. You have to type in your key number, and then you have to put it in your online banking, and then you can get access to your bank and everything's hunky-dory from there. You can transfer your money, do whatever it is that you want to do. Well, I've had my key card. I've been location dependent for a couple of years, so I've had my key card probably for about 2.5 years. And of course, I'm in the city of Bangkok at the moment, so I'm not at home. I'm away from where it is that I would normally be staying in Thailand. And I got my key card, ready to transfer some money, and did the little touchpad. And I was like, oh no, it's not working. Oh crap. We tried lots of different ways to warm it up. When you warm a battery, you rub it between your hands. We tried everything, blowing on it. I was praying. But it didn't work. So what that did for me is it started very quickly the brain reminding me of different situations of a time when I had no money. So I became emotionally triggered. I went instantly back into survival mode, which is exactly where I don't want to be. And I work very hard to move myself out of survival mode on a daily basis. So what happened was I got emotionally triggered by this little key card not working for me the same way that it would normally work. So instantly my mood changed. I started to emotionally close down. I started to emotionally withdraw. My mood had completely changed. I felt heavy. I felt disconnected. I'd really gone back into my shell, felt unable to speak, unable to express myself. I felt like in those moments a completely different person, because that little incident of not being able to get my money key card to work triggered a reaction that I wasn't quite expecting. So I closed down. I didn't want to talk. I felt stressed. I felt alone. I'm just referring to my notes so I don't forget. I felt overly anxious. And this didn't just go on for a couple of minutes. This went on for about 24 hours, for a couple of days. And I found myself slipping into thinking about what the worst case scenario could be. So being in survival mode, you're always looking for the route out. You're always looking for the next step. You always try and be one step ahead of yourself. The brain goes into complete overload, trying to think of a way to get yourself out of the situation. So I started to catastrophize. And I started to think about the worst case scenario. I started to think about, what happens if I forget? You know what it's like when you ring the online banking centre and they're like, ask you this whole set of questions. I never get them right. I always mess up. And then I always have to go into the bank and I have to, you have to reset whatever it is they need to reset, and they have to see you. So I'm starting to think about, oh my God, what happens when I ring them? I'm not going to be able to remember my passwords. I'm not going to be able to remember the information, the answers to the questions, because we've all messed up doing this, right? I'm not alone in that. Let me know in the comments box if you've ever experienced that, where you've been on the phone to your bank and you've just forgotten whatever the information is that you need to remember. You've had your account frozen, you've had to go into the bank and you've had to, reset whatever it is. So I was starting to think about the worst case scenario, really jumping ahead of myself. What happens if I forget the answers to the questions? What happens if my bank freezes? What happens if I can't get access to any money? I'm going to have to go home and sort it out. Going home isn't just like a couple of hours trip. It means going from Thailand to the UK. And then I started thinking about, oh my God, I might have to quarantine, and that's a whole bulk of money. And so I went right down this rabbit hole very quickly. It was like one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, that quick. It's how quick my brain was thinking, because I had been emotionally triggered and I was slipping back into a negative pattern of behavior, which I've worked so hard to navigate and move out of. Calling the bank, I think, for most people, stresses most people out, regardless of financial situations. And I think being dyslexic makes it even tougher, because we never remember those things. Even if we write them down, we might forget where we've put them. So I had emotionally closed down, and I'd emotionally closed down and withdrawn myself and gone deep within inside myself. And that, of course, affects the people around you. It affects your relationships, because they're left wondering, what the hell's going on? Where's Wendy gone? What's going on? What's created that change? And of course, they don't know about the experiences that you've had, and they don't know that you've been emotionally triggered. So they don't know how to handle you or the situation, which can be tricky in itself, which can create more trauma's the wrong word, but it can create more negativity, it makes an emotional trigger much more difficult to handle. So I felt, disconnected. I felt incredibly disappointed with myself. So I started to beat myself up emotionally, because I thought that I'd dealt with this level of baggage, but I obviously hadn't. So I was busy beating myself up, saying negative things to myself. I was becoming more fearful. I felt alone. So all of this, it's basically an illusion, which is what's playing out in your head, that's creating your behavior. And that is based on something that has happened in the past that has been quite traumatic. So I created the Conscious Coaching Reflective Toolbox, and part of my daily routine within that, to help me manage emotional triggers. And I have to say, I haven't been emotionally triggered for a long time. This is the first time in a long time where I've actually gone back into the loop, back into the emotional vortex, and got a bit stuck. I'm going to be honest, I got a bit stuck. So when I started to do my daily journaling exercise, which helps me manage my emotions and keeps me on track, I realized that there are a couple of things that have happened in my past that would create that level of emotional was going to say destruction, disconnect. Destruction is the wrong word, although it can be quite destructive if you allow it to continue over a period of time. If it was going on for weeks, it would be pretty destructive. You'd be pretty much on self-destruct. There were a couple of things that played out when I was journaling. One of the things I hadn't actually remembered. And the first one is that if I'm not careful, will revert back to a poverty mindset. So I was brought up in care. We never had any money. I never understood money. There's a whole load of stuff that has gone on in my childhood, in my early teens, and followed me through probably into my early 20s, that I was in a place of survival, didn't have any money, didn't know how to manage money. It was a very, very scary time. So that's one event which was very traumatic. I'm not going to lie, that was very traumatic and a very difficult time of my life. Then there was another time that I'd completely forgot about, which I think adds just another layer onto those experiences as a young woman, and that was that myself and my partner, we were coming back from Thailand. We stayed at Dubai, in a hotel in Dubai, and I think it was HSBC card stopped working. I don't know whether I've done the wrong code. I can't remember why it stopped working, but there was money in the account, so that shouldn't have been a problem. But the card stopped working, and we hadn't paid the hotel bill. We still had 3 days in Dubai, and we rang the bank. They didn't come back to us. So we had no access to money for 3 days. All we had was the money in our pocket. That was it. So that was another event that I'd had experienced whereby it was a very stressful event. So my brain, when this little key card stopped working, instantly went back into those experiences and then created this level of emotional detachment. And I didn't realize until I started journaling that I had closed down, that I slipped back into negative behavior, that an emotional event had been triggered, and I was responding. I was going back into survival mode, going back into myself and closing down, not quite knowing what to do. Real victim type behavior, but understandably so, because of the experiences it is that I have had. That's a perfectly natural response to have, because the brain is trying to find a way out, but it's trying to find a way out based on past experiences. So it wasn't until I started journaling about, how I was feeling, what the experiences were, and thinking about what else has happened in my life where I can connect the dots and start to understand why I'm behaving the way it is that I am behaving. So I've never been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress, but I will be very, very surprised if I don't have some of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. I haven't been given the label, been given lots of other labels, but not post-traumatic stress. But I think if I go down that route, I will find that I've definitely had some of the symptoms, because I've had a crazy childhood. So when something stressful happens like that, and it's out of my control, I start to slip back I become emotionally triggered, and I start to go into this loop of self-destructive behavior. I don't even know I'm in it. I knew that something wasn't quite right because of all of the work that I've done over the last couple of years, but I didn't quite realize I was in that hole until I started journaling. Crazy, hey? Absolutely crazy. Also, I don't know whether dyslexia has something to do with it, whether we process things differently, or whether I'm just human. human and I got emotionally triggered, which I think is more like it. Yeah, so the journaling process that I use it really helps me very quickly, very fast identify what the emotional trigger is, how to release that emotion so I can get myself back on track emotionally very quickly, so I'm not reacting from past experiences, and to create a new belief system around, okay, what is it I need to believe because I'm basing my behavior on my passed on traumatic events. How can I get away from that quickly? So how can I create healthier beliefs around what is happening, and what steps can I take to help me manage the situation positively rather than, letting it all consume me, being emotionally triggered and letting the whole thing just completely consume me. Consume me. So I'm not stuck in that emotional loop. I call it the emotional vortex where you just get sucked in and lose yourself until you can find out what it is that has emotionally triggered you. So I wanted to share that with you because that is a real life experience of an event that happened to me a couple of days ago where I got emotionally triggered, didn't realize what was going on. I wanted to share the impact that had on me. So maybe you can see if you are getting emotionally triggered by something, if you can relate to what it is that I am saying. If you can, drop in the comments box below. That would be awesome. If you've got any questions about conscious self-coaching, pop those below in the chat box. That would be absolutely awesome. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions for you. And until next time, remember, if you enjoyed this video, if you got some knowledge and insight from it, if it's been helpful, please do press the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can get up and coming insights of my crazy world. Take care, gorgeous.